Good day, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the People's Cabana. Yeah, that's the name of the show, right? That's what I thought. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I don't know how many people are going to be tracking this live, but check it out afterwards. We have a pretty amazing guest with us today, Mr. Tom Quiggin. I'm not going to introduce him, I'm not going to explain his experience and who he is. I'll let him introduce himself. He's a fantastic cat. We have him on here today to discuss the book that he has just written called Patti Hacks. Thomas Quiggin and Rick Gill put this together. So without further ado, let's bring on Mr. Tom Quiggin. How you doing, sir?
Alex, good to see you again. Things are generally good. I'm above ground. I'm eating. I'm still walking. Life is good.
These are good things. They're good things to have, and you can't hack anything if you're not above ground.
You got it.
Right on. So quickly, or not quickly, talk about it as much time as you would like. Please introduce yourself. Let people know who you are, what your experience is, because I know resumes matter when it comes to putting out books that have information that could help people.
Okay, so just so folks know, I did a bunch of years in the military, like a lot of folks. I used to be an airborne electronic sensor operator in the wonderful world of Sea King helicopters, operating everywhere from Puerto Rico and Aruba up to Iceland, over to the GI UK Gap and into the United Kingdom. I then went into the intelligence branch, which was an adventure. I got to go to exciting places like Bosnia, Croatia, Albania, Eastern Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, and every other crap hole on the planet. Following that, I actually did something a bit strange. I worked for the Privy Council office in the intelligence section there, and that's the intelligence section of government that serves the cabinet and the prime minister directly. So when the prime minister says we have intelligence this or intelligence that, that comes from IAS, the Intelligence Assessment Secretariat of the Privy Council office. I worked there for a while. I did 6 years with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police doing counterterrorism stuff, again on the intelligence side. And somewhere in all of this, I spent 1.5 years in Singapore on an intelligence project there. And then I had the most bizarre event in my life. Was I got called by the Bank of Canada, like the central bank, to go work for them. And when my phone rang one day and it said Bank of Canada on it, I just about panicked, and I thought, oh my God, how did I upset these guys? Because I've upset a few people over the years, as you might know. But anyway, I went to work for them as the security and operational risk manager for the Bank of Canada, where I was forced to learn how the economy actually works, how the money system actually works, how payments and settlements actually work, how inflation actually works. And I was just mind boggled by how bad it all is. It's not really a great system. So anyway, that's kind of my general background is operational military, operational intelligence. And then I've had a few run-ins with the financial world by having worked for the central banking system. And while working for the Bank of Canada, also did a lot of work with the G10 central banks, which is like the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Belgium, the Swedes, folks like that. And just so folks will know, just so we've got the cards on the table, I knew Tamara Leash before the convoy. I met her in Alberta once when I was out there on a speaking tour. So due to the fact I knew her before the convoy started, she actually called me before the convoy really got going, before it got to Ottawa, and said, can you help me out with some of the information stuff and the media stuff and the writing? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll help you out, no problem, without realizing where the convoy was going and what it blew up into. So my role with the convoy, as it just kind of evolved, was to do protective intelligence for the convoy. So that was doing basic intelligence work to protect the convoy itself, to protect the Ottawa police and the first responders around us, the paramedics and the firefighters, and then to protect the citizens who are living and working in that area. Now, as most people know, the convoy did not end well. And a bunch of people got their accounts frozen. I'm one of them. But anyway, nonetheless, that was kind of an interesting event in my life where, again, you got to see from the inside how our government doesn't work and how badly it's failing. So, yeah, that's a quick bit of a background on me. Life got started with the Canadian Forces. I got to travel around the world to a lot of neat places. And then I spent a bunch of years in the financial world, learning about where the economy is going, where finance is going, where money is going, why fiat currencies are failing, and why that's important to the average citizen.
That's quite the resume, and you have, so in essence, you've been behind the curtain, several curtains, but the big emerald curtain you have been behind, and that's what we're going to get into. Typically, most people aren't aware of the financial system, the banks, etc., how they operate, and then how the manipulation and the illusion trickles down to the average person. And so, your book, Patti Hacks, has some tips in there, some information, some strategies for people to navigate this this system. But more importantly, because of today's climate that we're in, right? We are, so it says recession survival skills for your health and wealth. In your opinion, are we in a recession, sir?
We are already in what's called a technical recession. The last quarter, Canada's GDP grew by 0.0 something. In other words, the economy is already flat. Most people didn't notice this, but our GDP per capita, as opposed to GDP overall, actually went down 4% in the Q3 of last year. So the only thing that makes our economy at the moment look like it's actually going anywhere is Trudeau's imported a couple of million people over the last few years, which has sort of artificially spiked a lot of the economy. And a lot of people think, well, it's not going that bad. But the reality is, look, we can get into some details here. But the basic thought here is to say, look, your costs are going to go up. And by costs, I mean taxes are baked in. They're going to go up substantially. The price of food continues to go up faster than the general rate of inflation. This idea about everybody in Canada being forced to buy an EV, et cetera, is going to drive the cost of energy through the roof. Interest rates are up, debts are up, you name it. So here's the bottom line, folks. If you thought the last 2 to 3 years were interesting because of inflation rates, debt rates, interest rates, mortgages going up, rent going up, I will say to you with a straight face, you're going to love the next couple of years. Taxes are going up substantially. Why? Just one short example. Our beloved government has doubled the national debt in the last 5 or 6 years. So instead of the government being about $600 or $700 billion in debt, we're now about $1.2 billion in debt now, or $1 trillion in debt. Sorry, $1 trillion in debt
With a T.
with a T, yeah, trillion with a T.
How many? You expressed in your book that how many zeros is a trillion?
12. Yeah. I don't even know what $1 trillion is. I mean, I know what it is. It's a 12 with, 12. It's a 1 with 12 zeros behind it. But what does that even mean? It's like a crap load of money.
Right.
So here's what it means to the average citizen. For 2024, the finance ministry is estimating that the first $47 billion in taxes you pay will go nowhere except paying the interest on the national debt. So in 2025, they're estimating that's going to go to 50 billion. Now, I'll tell you, they lowball that stuff. The numbers are actually probably higher. But in the next 2 years, we're going to spend $100 billion of taxpayers' money paying the interest only on the debt. The debt will stay there and you get nothing. Now, what is $100 billion? I mean, that's like a crap load of money. But what does it mean? Well, in 2021, the entire budget for the Canadian Forces was $26 billion. So we're going to spend $100 billion in the next 2 years on taxes that only pay the interest on the debt and give you nothing. That would have paid the entire defense budget for 4 years. Right. Or if you look at the health transfer tax, it's about $42 billion a year. So the extra money we're paying in taxes in the next 2 years would have covered all of the transfer taxes for healthcare for well over 2 years. So in other words, it's an absolutely crushing debt. And that's just the federal deficit. Forget the provinces, forget the municipalities. So all of that to say is the next few years, your cost of living is going to go through the roof. Interest rates are up, food inflation is up, rent is up, mortgages is up. Taxes are going to go up substantially this year. Toronto, they're saying property taxes are going to be between 10 and 16% increase next year. Not only that, here's the other thing. Our healthcare system is imploding. It's failing. Emergency rooms aren't open on the weekends in some places. Wait lists for X-rays, lab test, MRI, all that kind of stuff, MRA, all that kind of stuff. Those lists are going from weeks to months, in some cases 2 years. So one quick example, province of Ontario, the year 2022, 11,000 people died while they were on a wait list. 11,000 people died waiting for medical treatment in Ontario. That's just Ontario, just 1 year. So we're trying to get a message to people and say, look, the future is grim. The healthcare system is failing. The government is failing. It's massively in debt. We are in a debt trap, which we can talk more about later. But I don't want to be pessimistic. I know that sounds strange, because I'm saying, look, in many cases, there's ways of beating the system. But what it requires is for you to think a bit about how you live, think a bit of how you work, how you get to work, what you eat, what you buy, how you buy it, when you buy it, where you buy it. And you can save a lot of money. Now, I'm not trying to save you $100. I'm not trying to save you $1,000. We're saying, look, you need to start thinking about cutting costs in your life, $10,000, $20,000, $60,000. So the first section of the book is actually called The $60,000 Breakfast.
Mhm.
And what we're trying to communicate here, and you and I were talking a bit about it beforehand, is we talk about this mythical couple that live in a house together. So let's say our mythical couple has a very modest mortgage these days of $250,000, which these days in Ottawa, you can't even buy a shack for that. But let's say you get a mythical couple, $250,000 mortgage, and they like to go out for breakfast every Saturday morning with their friends. So they do. Now, cost of food in restaurants is going up right now. Cost of mortgages are going up. But even a modest $250,000 25-year mortgage at about 6% right now, which is a fairly good deal. If you quit going to breakfast, took that money and put it in a jar, and then once a year put that on your mortgage, that would knock $60,000 off the other end of the money you owe on your mortgage. In other words, it would knock several years off the other end of your mortgage. So again, what we're trying to say is, if you make very minor adjustments in your life, it can have a massive impact down the road. Now, I'll use another example right after that and say, look, if you don't want to give up going out for breakfast because friends are important, you like to get out of the house now and again, order down a menu. If you order the full breakfast at your local, let's say, sports bar type restaurant, it's going to cost you probably $17 to $20 per person right now in the major centers. If you order like the breakfast sandwich with just, like an egg McMuffin kind of a thing with some hash browns and a coffee and a bit of fruit or something, you're probably going to look at something in the $12 to $14 range instead. 2 people doing this every week, 50 weeks a year. If you just order down menu, it knocks $24,000 off your mortgage on the other end. So for the simple price of changing what you order on a menu, you can knock $24,000 off the other end of your mortgage. That's huge. Mm-hmm. Now, we get into a whole bunch of other stuff too about what you're buying, how you buy it, et cetera, et cetera. And you can knock $1 off here, $2 off there, $20 there. But where it becomes important is the math and what you do with that money. So if you spend $20 a week on something and you quit doing it, it's $1,000 a year. You put $1,000 a year extra on your credit card, which right now is running at 28% interest. Not only did you knock that down by $1,000, you also knocked it down by $280 in interest you're not paying. So I guess that's kind of the basic thing. And then the flip side of this is your health. Right now, a lot of people are trapped in this kind of big agriculture, big pharma, big government kind of cycle where you go to the store and you buy frozen pizza in a box, you buy a can of beans, you buy a thing of Kraft dinner, you buy whatever. And this is what, what's loosely called these days hyper-processed food. This is food that's not really food anymore. It's been processed several times and it's a food-like substance. And it's expensive and it's very unhealthy. Right now in Canada, we have huge numbers of people becoming diabetics. We have huge numbers of young people getting cancer. And you ask yourself, like, what the heck are people who are in their 20s and 30s? why are they getting cancer? Why are they getting diabetes, strokes, heart attacks, myocarditis? We're getting cholera is making a comeback, polio is making a comeback. All these sorts of things are making a comeback. And you ask yourself, like, how is this friggin' happening? Now, I'm just going to read a couple of stats here that are quite stunning, and then we'll kind of move on a bit. But in 2001, about 1.3 million Canadians were thought to be diabetic. By 2018, that had gone up to 3.4 million. In other words, in 17 years, the number of people who are diabetic tripled. Now they're guessing in Canada, there's about 5.7 million people who are diabetic, full-on diabetic, which means insulin and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And
like type 1.
Yeah, type 1 or type 2 diabetics who have to take insulin or some other form of drug or regimen, or they'll die.
Right.
And there's probably a grand total altogether, everybody included, of about 11 million Canadians who are either diabetic or what they call pre-diabetic. So they're taking
that's an insane number. You quoted that in the book.
Yeah.
11 million. That is an absolutely staggering number.
That's almost 1 out of 4 people have a problem with blood sugar. And you think, how are we getting all these cancers, myocarditis, strokes, all this kind of junk? How are we getting this? And the answer is, in short, we're poisoning ourselves with a lot of the crap we eat. So when you go to a store, and some of the stuff's in the book, I got some other stuff. There's a Patti Hacks Twitter account folks can follow if you want. When you go to the store now and you buy cereal, you look down that whole row of cereal with Captain Crunch and Sugar Pops and Special K and Raisin Bran and all that junk. A lot of those things now, sugar is either the first or second ingredient in the box. So when you read a label on a box, when you see something like this and there's the list of ingredients, the ingredients are listed by weight. So whatever the most stuff that's in the box, that's what comes first and then second, third. So most cereals are sugar and wheat, or wheat and then sugar. But a lot of them, like the Tim Hortons Timbit cereal and the Captain Crunch and the Sugar Pops, sugar is the first ingredient. And most of the time it's 25, 30% of the box. What you're feeding your kids is raw sugar. And then you can't figure out why kids get fat. And then when they're 30 years old, they're type 2 diabetics. You're poisoning people. And people think, oh, I'll feed my kids cereal because it's healthy. Well, here's the thing. Read the label.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of the second part of the thing, is to say our finances are falling apart and life's about to get very expensive. But also at the same time, our healthcare system is failing while we're being fed huge amounts of garbage food. Hyper processed food, and we can talk maybe a bit more on what hyper processed food is. But again, we're going to put a positive spin on this and say, look, if you are careful with your money and you think about how you spend it, and if you don't eat garbage food, your health will go up, your wealth will go up, you'll lead a better life, and your life is just going to be better overall, and the control lies with you. If, on the other hand, you go the other route and you eat what big government, what big agriculture, and what big pharma tells you should do. You eat a bunch of food, you get sick, then you take pills because you get sick. Goodbye money. There you go. So then again, there's a whole lot of other stuff behind this. There's the Leave the Cities movement, which is a part of all of this, that says if you're going to live in a high tax environment, it's going to hurt you. So if you're thinking about getting a job, moving, or something like that, look at living in a town that doesn't have a bus system, doesn't have a welfare system, may not have even like a sewer system. If you live in a small town with modest services, your property taxes are going to go through the floor. If you live in downtown Ottawa, downtown Toronto, downtown Montreal, downtown Edmonton, wherever, your cost of living is going to be stunningly high. So anyway, that's just another one of the thoughts there. But yeah, there's any one of 1,000 things we can talk about here if you want to explore.
No, you nailed three big ones. There's a lot to go over there. Let's start with the original one, the hypothetical couple that go to breakfast 50 out of 52 weeks a year. So mortgage, you split that up, it's mortgage, it's death pledge essentially is what the word means. So you're pledging yourself to the death to pay this off. So that modest $250,000 mortgage at 25-year amortization, that was 6%. And that was the 60,000 at the end of the 25 years. That was assuming it was 6% the whole time, correct? So,
yeah, which
right,
right now can actually go
right,
up or down, but
right,
yeah.
exactly. You know, like anybody who's old enough to remember, I was just a young lad. I was born in 1980, but you know, mortgage rates back then were like 16, 18%, but a house, you know, was 75,000, 50,000, 20,000, depending on where you were. It's a lot of folks will think like, well, what's the point in saving, you know, $400 or $500 a year to do that? But if you do look at the interest rate and you look at what it could mean for you 25 years down the road, that's a staggering amount of money, $60,000. And a lot of folks aren't thinking long term, especially right now, because there's hard times are coming. So it's very hard for younger people, especially, or anyone who's in some type of financial dire straits, to even forecast a future beyond the next 5 years, right?
What
But that's a mindset, and that's a control thing. So what I like, what your book is proposing, is the control starts with you. The discipline starts with you.
Yeah, you don't have to be a fanatic. You don't have to run 200 miles a week. You don't have to be crazy, but you do have to sort of think a little bit. Think about how you spend money. Think about where you spend money. Do a bit of math in your head. We're not talking hard math here. We're talking basic math.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take responsibility for your actions and then think about your actions, the results are stunning. So, one of the things that happened to me a while ago, and you and I have talked about this before, I was in downtown Ottawa a few years back, ran into somebody I knew, hadn't seen him for a while. It's like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? You know, blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, what are you up to? Whatever. I said, well, my girlfriend and I are going to go to the Dominican Republic for a week. And I remember this woman looks at me and goes, well, must be nice to have that kind of money. And I just froze. I didn't know what to say. I just smiled politely and kept on going. But here's the thing. I know that person I was talking to goes to Starbucks every day. They walk in there and they order one of those, I don't even know what it is, wappe, frappe, latte, something fancy.
$6 beverage. Yeah.
Yeah. And those things go, you know, for $6 to $8 a pop. Mm-hmm. So if you go to Starbucks every day, and just here's a real simple example what the whole book is about. If you go to Starbucks every day and you spend $6 on a coffee, people go, well, it's only $6. What does it matter? And they're correct at a certain point. $6, it's nothing. What can you do with $6 these days? But if you work for a living and you go to the factory, you go to the shop, you go to the office, like a normal person does, that's 200 to 220 times a year. So your $6 Starbucks coffee is now, guess what? $1,200. So guess what I paid to go to the DR for a week that year? $1,200. And that just kind of hit me at the time. It's like, if you'd been willing to give up one coffee a day for a year, you could go on a vacation for a week in the Caribbean at a 4-star place, all food, all booze, all transportation. So right. It's just kind of, you know, it's that simple, but people don't think about that. They just say, well, it's only $6. I'm not going to worry about it.
That's what we were talking about before we went live. Was it seems pedestrian, it seems infantile, it seems simple, but it's so simple, in fact, that people don't even think about it. And another thing we were discussing is, now that money is becoming less tangible, people are using less cash. It's just a tap, or whatever the case may be. The transfer of funds is not concrete, so it doesn't even register in your brain. Your neurons, your fingertips aren't feeling it, you know. So I quit smoking. I started up again, and I will quit again. But there was a period in time where I did quit for a few years, and for that year, I physically put aside the cash, physically. And then at the end of that year, I took out that cash, and it was enough for me and my wife to go to Mexico for 2 weeks. You know, just doing these little things have a massive impact, not only on what you can spend, what your spending power is, but your own discipline, and then your own control. You're taking back the reins, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. You talk about the idea of taking cash and sticking it in a jar. My grandmother, my mother, people I know grew up with the envelope stuffing system where they got paid. They typically a lot of them got paid in cash. And my mother would put so much money in this envelope for the mortgage, so much in that envelope for groceries, so much in envelope for whatever. And she could see the money coming and going, and she knew when she was out of money, etc. And my mother used to balance the books of the household to the penny every month. Right. But yeah, it's if you actually have to physically take that money and hand it across the counter to somebody, it's like, wow, that was a $20 bill and poof, it's gone. Whereas if you just go like, beep, beep with your card, who knows how much money you got?
Right.
You haven't a clue. Just beep, beep, and it's gone. And then at the end of the month, you go, where did my $1,000 go in my savings account? Well, $20 here, $30 there, coffee every day, et cetera, et cetera. Here's
even the person at the cash before you carry on, they're stunned. Anybody who's paying, like I'm using cash almost completely nowadays. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? So everybody needs to start utilizing cash, because it is our well, in Canada we don't have many rights, but in any case, use it. Anybody else, fine. Let me know in the comments that when you give them cash, like first of all, they automatically just give you the debit machine. Let's say you're going through a drive-through. They just stick it out the window. They don't tell you the price. Just tap. It could be $600 burger. You have no idea. I hand them a bill, and like the lady or kid is stunned. They don't even know how to do the math. They have to check the machine, and you might not even get the right change back. So you got to check all these things. So we're using cash is not the norm, but we need to bring that back. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, here's just another quick thought. It's in the book. When you go into a store these days, you're going to Tim Hortons, you go into, I don't know, the grocery store or whatever, but it's really bad at food counters when you walk up and say, yeah, I'll have a coffee, I'll have a bagel and something, whatever. And they'll look at you and go, oh, that's $9. And you go, hang on, it was like $2 for the coffee. It was like $1.50 for the bagel. So that's $3.50. Throw in some taxes. We're at $4, $5 at the most. How did we get the $9? And they go, well, the machine says $9, sir. And you go, well, $2 for this, $3 for that, taxes can't be. And they're like, oh, I don't know, sir. That's what it says. And it's like, oh my God, we have kids growing up in school right now who aren't doing basic math. And I think, man, if you can't add 2 and 3 and come up with 5 and then throw in some taxes and get to 6, what are you going to do when you go to get a mortgage and the bank just cleans you out? Your money is going to wind up in the hands of the bank instead of you, because you're not thinking about the problem. Here's just another quick thing I learned working for the Bank of Canada. Money. Where does money come from? Well, the bank prints it. This money is actually made in Australia and Mexico, believe it or not. It's not, most of it's not actually made in Canada, but that's another story for another day. The banks hate you when you use cash. And this is why they're all going to the credit systems and the debit systems. The reason is, where did the Royal Bank or the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce get that $20 bill that you just took out of their ATM? Well, the answer is they got it from the Bank of Canada. The Bank of Canada delivers it to them in pallets, and you ought to see it. I've been in the vault. I've been in the cash vaults in the Bank of Canada, and it's impressive to see a full pallet of $20 bills. But they deliver it to the Royal Bank of Canada, and then they go around and they stuff their ATMs with the thing. Here's the trick. The Royal Bank of Canada or the Bank of Montreal or whoever has to pay for the money, and they pay 3% of the value of the bill. So when the Royal Bank of Canada gets a $20 bill and they stick it in their bank machine, that cost them 60 cents. So when you take your money out in cash and then pay in cash, they hate you because it cost them 60 cents up front to stuff the machine. Plus, when I pay the storekeeper $20 in cash, I'm not using a credit card, so the banks don't get their 3% cut on that. Right. So when you pay cash, not only are you putting the boots to the bank, you're actually saving the local storekeeper money, and the banks aren't making the money off you. The storekeeper is making more money off you. It's a better deal for all concerned, except for the actual bank itself, and I'm not that worried about them. They can suffer it out. So that was just one of the little things I learned at the Bank of Canada is if you pay cash, it benefits you. It benefits the store folks. The government hates it, and the banks hate it. So if it's good for you and it's good for the store and the government hates it, as far as I can tell, that must be a good thing. So that's just another little bit of insight.
Yeah, absolutely. There. And I'm actually curious about what you think about. I'm trying to go back to another. The second point that you brought up was, we were talking about national debt. So we're paying off the interest rate on the debt, and that interest rate is now 4 times the national D&D budget, for example. I've heard myself from a lot of not a lot of folk, but some people say like, oh, what's the big deal? It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me. And you basically summed it up like it's going to create a tsunami, and it's going to affect everything. Can you go into a little bit more detail to about that, and what that means for the average person?
Yeah. So here's a very quick way of thinking about the problem. Debt is slavery. Every major religion in the world, pretty much, and every major financial school of thought in the world over the last 5,000 years has looked at the issue and says, at the end of the day, debt equals slavery. Gold is the money of kings. Silver is the money of gentlemen. Cash is the money of the middle class. Debt is the money of the peasantry. In other words, if you're in debt, you're a slave. The further in debt you are, the bigger the slave you are. So debt is bad. Now we've got all these modern monetary theorists, and we've got Trudeau, and we've got Christie Freeland going, oh no, debt is bad. Interest rates are, investing with cheap money is good, blah, blah, blah. It's all crap at the end of the day.
We have a AAA credit rating on the global stage.
Yeah. Which means that they think the government of Canada can continue to extract money out of Canadians to pay these debts, which is now actually starting to fail.
So treating us like slaves, essentially.
Yeah, you're becoming a slave to the government because the government's so far in debt. And by the way, when Trudeau made that statement, we took on the debt so Canadians didn't have to during the pandemic. It's like, who do you think pays the government debt, you moron? It's us. No. There is no such thing as the government. It's taxpayers' money. So here's kind of the kicker. And we're in a debt trap. And now this is the one thing I'm going to say that's maybe a bit complex. I don't want to get into economic theory and stuff, but we're in a debt trap. So we got a problem. First off is we spent the last 15 years with near zero interest rates. I know a guy that's got a mortgage, 2.3%. That's a stunningly good deal because mortgage rates were down around 0%. In the 5,000 years of recorded financial history where people have been keeping books, interest rates were never that low for that long. So unfortunately, we had a whole group of people that grew up for 15 years thinking that interest rates between 0 and 3% were normal. They're not. Interest rates normally over time are, the overnight lending rate should be around 3 to 5%, good days, bad days kind of thing. And like you mentioned, a mortgage, my parents had a mortgage at like 14% for a couple of years. So mortgage and interest rates in the 5 to 15% range should be seen kind of normal, whatever. We had that one period of super low interest rate, which was a historical anomaly that's never been done before and may never happen again. But here we are. So we're now massively in debt and we're facing big inflation for the last couple of years. Food inflation was running around 12%. Core consumer price index was up 7, 8, 9%. Even right now, consumer price index in the United States is around 4% and going back up again. So here's what's happened. The government of Canada borrowed hundreds of billions of dollars over the last 5 or 6 years, doubling the national debt from, say, 800 billion up to $1.2 trillion. So the amount of money we have to pay in debt has doubled. But worse than that, that kind of wild spending where they were dumping billions out the dollars on CERB and all these tax breaks and everything else during the pandemic is wildly inflationary. So, and everybody told them it's going to cause inflation. They're like, oh no, everything's fine. We're under control. Of course, what did we get in 2021 and 2022? We got a ton of inflation and we're still getting it. So here's the debt trap. In order to bring inflation down, the Bank of Canada had to jag interest rates from the 2% overnight lending rate up to, I don't even know what it is right now, 4.5%, 5% or whatever it is. So the debt you're paying on your credit card, the debt you're paying on your mortgage goes up. Well, so does the government's debt. All the bonds they're buying, 3 months bond, 6 months bond, 12, 3-year, 5-year, 7-year, 20-year bonds, all those interest rates are going to go up. So the government has to pay a lot more interest on the money they're borrowing. And when I say the government has to pay that, I mean you. We have to pay that. So that is going to go up. So what you've got now is a whole bunch of people hollering and saying, oh, this is terrible. Governments are going to go over a cliff trying to keep up with the debt load they imposed on themselves. And that load has just soared because interest rates have more than doubled in the last couple of years. So we're going to be spending billions upon billions of dollars here in Canada. By another year from now, the American government will be spending $1 trillion a year on interest debt. And that's it. Right. So the first $1 trillion they collect in taxes, gone. Same thing here. Now, here's the debt trap. Everybody's angry about this. They say you can't afford a mortgage, you can't afford government debt. We have to bring interest rates back down. Well, if we bring interest rates back down, we're going to get more inflation because our government is still inflationary. It is still shoveling money out the door at a stunning rate. You don't see the city of Toronto cutting expenses. You don't see the government in Ottawa cutting expenses. They are trying to fight inflation while spending a ton of money, which is inflationary. Now, here's the other thing. Trudeau says he wants to bring in 500,000 people to Canada next year. Guess what? That's massively inflationary when you bring in a whole bunch of people like that, and most of them won't be working. They're going to wind up on the welfare rates. They're going to wind up, they're going to want to live somewhere because it's Canada. You can't have people living outdoors in -20. So if you think your rent problem is an issue right now, wait till we get another 500,000 people looking for a place to live. If you think the cost of a house right now is expensive, wait till you see what happens over the next couple of years as the pressure on the housing market goes up. Now,
just before you carry on, Tom, on that point, I forget where my brain is foggy right now. Excuse me, but I read somewhere that one of the excuses that the current government is using for the 500 to 1.2 million person immigration annually is that it aids them in their credit score. Do you know anything about that?
Okay, so good news. Immigration is a good news thing or a bad news thing, depending how it works. So if you had, let's say back in the 80s and 90s, we had a bunch of people pouring into Canada. Generally speaking, that was a good thing because most of those people came to Canada. They wanted to be here. They wanted to work. They wanted to get a job. They wanted to buy a house. They wanted to buy a car, blah, blah, blah. So when you measured the effect of immigration back in the 80s and 90s, here's the funny thing. Immigrants, after they were here for 5 years, were making about 120% of the average wage in Canada. In other words, most of the immigrants we brought here, were not only successful, they were very successful. They were a net asset to the government. So if you have a person who comes in and has a job and they make money and they pay taxes, that helps the government in the sense that if the government wants to go borrow money on international money markets, they look at Canada and go, oh, you've got 30 million people there and they're all working and your debt is low. Wow, you guys are a good credit rate. We'll lend you a ton of money. Now, if you look at a lot of the folks we're bringing in right now on when they change to like family reunification and women at risk and climate refugees and all this kind of stuff, most of these people aren't working. They're a net liability to the system. They're a drain in money. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on hotels. Here in Ottawa, they're filling up the hockey rinks again with people who are, so-called refugees, which they're not. They're financial migrants. And it sort of spikes the population, which kind of looks good in a certain way. But when you look at the GDP per capita, it actually goes down. In other words, the international money markets are going to look at Canada and go, hang on, you got 40 million people there now, which is good. But a lot of those people are earning way less than the average. In other words, those people, as they come into your country, are a drain rather than an asset. So it does kind of, if you want to put it that way, if you think about your own personal credit score, that the bank gives you a credit score of 720 or 780 or something like that, the government of Canada's credit score is starting to go down. Same with the American government. They're being put on watch. The credit score is going down because we're pouring money out the door at an amazing rate with absolutely no plan on how to pay for this sort of stuff. So think about this. Trudeau wants to bring in 500,000 people next year. Well, okay, so you bring in 500,000 people, but what does that mean? It's like, well, do you need more doctors because your population went up by 500,000? And the answer is, yeah, in Canada, we should have about 250 doctors per 100,000 people. So next year, the number of doctors we have in Canada should go up by 1,250. just to keep the medical system the same, not to improve it, but just to maintain its position. Same thing with nurses, about 325 per 100,000. So we should have about 1,600 more nurses in Canada next year in order to accommodate this massive inflow. And of course, are we getting more nurses? Are we getting more doctors? No, the answer is the numbers are going down right now because people are leaving.
We fired a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, plus we fired a whole bunch of them who they won't hire back, which is like, suicidally stupid.
Yeah, it almost seems like it's by design, but that's for another show.
That's a whole other discussion. Yeah, but bottom line is, at the end of the day, it's inflationary. It costs more. That means more money spent, more debt. So while the government says, "Oh, we're fighting inflation," the reality is they're trying to fight inflation on one side by jacking the interest rates, but they're causing more inflation by spending more money, shoveling more money out the door. In other words, our government lacks financial discipline. Now, Prime Minister Trudeau, to his credit, actually said, "I don't follow monetary policy." And I just like, wow, he said that out loud. That's like getting on an airplane and asking the pilot, "How much fuel do we have on board?" And he goes, "I don't know. Who follows fuel? Who cares?" It's like, I'd get off the airplane. Sorry, see you, dude. Like, not getting on your airplane. But Prime Minister Trudeau actually says he doesn't care about issues like that. And you can see it. I guess he doesn't, because our currency is going down. Our inflation is going up. Our financial position as a country is going down. And it's going to hurt Canadians over the next little while, which again, of course, gets us back to the whole purpose behind this book, is to how do you as Joe Average Citizen organize your life while the government is doing stupid stuff like this. Now, one other quick thought before I'll let you jump back in again.
No, please. Go ahead.
The government says, "We don't like inflation. We're fighting inflation." It's a lie. Why would I say that? Well, the government loves inflation because they can inflate the debt away, which means they can spend even more money. But think about this. If you bought something a couple of years ago that was $100, you buy a sleeping bag at Canadian Tire. It's $100. So the guy at Canadian Tire sticks out his hand and says it's $115 because there's tax on it. So you go back a few years later and the guy says, "Oh, that sleeping bag is now $200." And you're just like, wow. But it's not only $200 more, it's $30 in taxes. So as inflation goes up, so does your cost of living. Everything you buy, if it goes from $1 to $2, instead of spending 50 cents on taxes, you're now spending 30 cents on taxes. So as inflation goes up, your standard of living goes down while the amount of tax the government collects goes up. In other words, inflation is a wealth transfer tax. It takes money from the poor and gives it to the government. So when governments say, we're really fighting inflation and we're doing it's job number one and all that stuff, they're lying through their teeth. That's just a bit of basic reality there.
Yeah. So and that in turn allows them to spend more money, which keeps the cycle going. And so I guess the average person or anybody who's paying attention would be asking why, and that's why we get into all types of other discussions that we'll have later on. But let's get back into solutions, right? So this book is very much solutions based. It may be common knowledge for some folk, but I guarantee you for others it isn't. And there's some cool tricks. So give us some other highlights and some insights for how people can help fight inflation other than the obvious.
Yeah, well, one of the things is it's kind of funny. And you laugh. I know folks are going to laugh when I say this, but you know how you go into a store, the family goes out to McDonald's on the weekend. Yeah, can we have this and that? Well, do you want fries with that? And, everybody says, yeah, I'll have fries with that. And it's like, well, did you ever actually think about why are they doing that? And the answer, of course, is they have an interest in selling you more stuff, because if they sell you more stuff, you make more money. So one of the things we put in the book here is if you're just like two people go into, I don't know, just the example I think we were using was McDonald's or Burger King or something like that. And you say, yeah, I'll have two large burgers.
Would you like fries with that?
Yeah. So if you have two large burgers and two medium Diet Coke or something like that, before taxes, you're going to be looking at about $17.44 right now. I did that off the website of a couple of the restaurants. Now, if they go, hey, do you want fries with that? Or, oh, do you want the full meal deal? Because, that's a better deal financially if you get the full meal deal. If you say, yeah, well, then the price on average goes from $17.44 up to $22.63. In other words, they just jacked you up for about a 30% increase in price. And you go, well, it's only $5, but whatever. Well, okay, it's $5 plus it's tax on that, which in Ontario would be another 75 cents extra in taxes. And there you go. You just increased your price by 30%. You just gave a bunch more money to the government. And what did you get? 550 calories of extra food that has very little nutritional value. Now, here's kind of the trick about this. If you avoid that kind of thing and you say, no, I don't want your extra meal deal, or I don't want this and I don't want that. If you had a family of 4 that goes out once a week to a McDonald's kind of thing or whatever, it works out to about $45 a month in extra costs if you say yes to, do you want fries with that? $45 a month, that's $90 every 2 months. 6 times 9 is 54. That's $540 a year. Well, if you took that $540, put it in a jar, and then put it in your mortgage once a year, that would knock several $1,000s off your mortgage. If you put that $540 on your Canadian Tire credit card or your Visa, your MasterCard, Suzy Shear, or whatever at 28%, that's another probably $100 right there that you get back that you didn't have to spend. So something just as simple as saying no to all the extras, whatever, a huge bunch of money. Now, here's another funny thing. I'm sitting here with a cup of coffee, and I do tend to drink a lot of coffee. So if you have a Keurig machine or whatever those things are called, right now, if you buy those little plastic pods that have to go in the machine, they're 40 cents a pop up to about $1 a pop, depending where you buy them and which ones you buy. If you buy the Starbucks one at Starbucks, they're about $1. If you go to Costco, they're about 40 cents. So just for fun, if you use 2 cups of coffee a day at 50 cents a pop, that's $1 a day. That's $365 a year. If there's 200 people, or if there's 2 people living in the house, you're at $730 a year, something like that. So that's well over $700 a year to buy those little plastic pod things. Now, I don't have one of those machines anymore. Mine died, and I didn't buy another one, but I bought a coffee press. So I put the coffee in the coffee press. I pour the boiling water, and I push the thing down. There's my coffee, and there's my cup of coffee. Making coffee with a coffee press is less than 10 cents a cup. So if you look at, let's say, 50 cents a shot with a Keurig machine to 10 cents a shot with a coffee press, 40 cents a day. If you've got 2 people living in a house and they each have 2 cups of coffee a day, that's 4 a day. That's $1.60 a day, $365, blah, 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 365
Right.
days in a year, you're at $500, you know it. So just by using real coffee in a coffee press rather than using a Keurig machine, you're at $200, $300, $400 a year, depending how many people you have in a house and how much coffee you drink. Another fun little trick that I tell people, my sister has a Keurig machine, so when I go to her house, they got all those little pods with all the fancy coffees and all that stuff. When they're by myself and I house sit for a week to take care of her house, I put the plastic thing in the Keurig machine and I set it on medium-sized cup and I use it once. And then I just open the machine, close it again, and set it on small and use it the second time, and it works just fine. So it cuts the number of Keurig pods you use in half by one simple little trick. And when you start using, 4, 5, 600 of those things in a year between 2 people in a house, it starts to add up to real money. And if you take that money and stick it on your mortgage, it's thousands of dollars at the other end. It's absolutely amazing, the stuff you can do. Now, there's a whole bunch of other stuff in the books on how to take a shower, which is like a Navy thing.
Well, but before we get into that, I just want to highlight that because people in the chat and God bless you all for being here are saying, I wouldn't go to McDonald's or do this or do that. These are just examples, right? These are examples for let's just say the typical person that lives in an urban environment. But there are various, you could take these principles and apply them to whatever it is that you're buying, or whatever it is that you're making, whether it be chicken feed, whether it be a woodcutter, or the type of oil that you use, or how you use your oil, etc. These are all ways. The point that Tom is making here is that at the end of the month or end of the year, by cutting in these whatever areas they may be, whether they're needs or wants, etc., you put that money physically aside, then you put that on your death pledge.
Yep.
Pay that down.
Yeah. Here's another key thing in the book. Maybe we'll just talk about this for a bit. Doesn't matter what you're buying. You're going to McDonald's, you're going to the feed store, you're going to buy a bag of carrots from the farmer down the road. One of the things people don't really know most of the time is, what is a fair price for the product you're buying? What should you be paying for it? You can't get stuff for free because farmers have to work. Diesel has to go in tractors. Truck drivers have to be paid. So you're going to pay for stuff. But that doesn't mean you should get robbed blind either. So one of the examples I love to use, and again, I don't recommend you eat Kraft Dinner, but nonetheless, it's a fun example to use because everybody knows what Kraft Dinner is around the world. So let's say you're going to buy a box of Kraft Dinner, or you're going to buy a pound of hamburger, or you're going to buy a bag of carrots. What's a fair price? And what I've noticed over the last several years as I really dig into this, the price spread on what people are paying can be as much as 300, 500, or 600% more from one store to another, from one product to another. So just as a fun example, and again, we're not recommending you eat Kraft Dinner because it's got its own problems. But if you buy the fake Kraft Dinner,
as he pulls one up, by the way, he eats this. He eats it.
No, I buy this stuff and I keep examples. And I'm going to show you the coffee thing as well in a while.
Nice.
But this is an absolutely wonderful example, and you should do this with everything you buy. Carrots, peas, onions, cars, houses, a new hat, a bottle of booze. Doesn't matter what it is. So you can buy the store brand Kraft Dinner, like it's the fake stuff. And this actually came from a dollar store. It's 87 cents a box for the 200-gram box. Kraft Dinner, by the way, as an example of shrinkflation, just cut theirs from 225 grams down to 200 grams. So in other words, your box of Kraft Dinner, which has stayed exactly the same, hasn't. They actually shrank it by 25 grams. But what's a fair price for a box of Kraft Dinner? Well, Walmart, if you go to their website, they sell it for about $1 a box. If you go to most grocery stores, it's about $2 a box, $2.25 a box. If you go to a 7-Eleven or a Shoppers Drug Mart or something like that, like a convenience store, they're charging about $3.25 a box. So you tell people and say, look, this person paid less than $1. This person paid more than $3. That's a 300% price spread on groceries. Now, same thing. I walk into a store and I watch people, especially in the meat counter, they walk up, they grab a thing of hamburger, and away they go. They don't even look at the price. They don't look at the weight. And I tell people, do not look at the price that you're paying. Look at the cost per unit. What are you paying per gram, per kilogram, or per pound, or per ounce, or whatever you think in? And that's where it gets truly stunning. So medium ground hamburger right now is going anywhere $14, $16, $18 a kilo. The lean ground hamburger is going $16, $18, $20 a kilo. And that's up from like $6.59 a kilo or $8.80 a kilo from before the pandemic. But depending where you buy it and when you buy it, you can get medium ground hamburger right now for $8.80 a kilo when it's on sale. But in a lot of stores on any given day, it's like $18 a kilo. And it's like, dear God, that's twice the price for the same product, depending which day you buy it and where. So one of the things I tell people is to say, look, you need to know what is a good price to pay for a bag of carrots. What is a good price for a dozen eggs? And if you don't know what a good price is, how do you know what you're buying is a good deal or not? So I'm just going to try and find, I got an example in the book here with eggs. And this is a fascinating thing. Here we go. I just found it. People go into the store and they buy eggs. And by the way, eggs are protein. And even at 30 cents an egg, they're still cheap in terms of the nutrition and the healthcare you're getting. But here's the thing. Local store here, and it's the same thing in a lot of places. You go in and you buy 1 dozen eggs of no description. They're large, Canada grade A, but nobody says anything about the music was paid for the chickens and they weren't fed, organic food on a, blah, 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 open range and all that stuff. But just run of the mill eggs, $3.89 a dozen. But if you buy 18 eggs, it's $6.89. And if you buy 30 eggs in a flat, it's $10.69. And you go, was that a good deal at $3.89? Well,
the average person would assume that in bulk it must be cheaper, right? That's the assumption.
Exactly. That's the working assumption. Now, actually, here's the thing. If you buy 18 eggs in one of those dozen and a half thing, worst deal going. So that example I just gave you came from a couple of stores around here. Right now, eggs should be going at best for about 30 cents an egg, or $3.60 to $3.80 kind of a dozen, 30, 32, 33 cents an egg. But if you buy them in 18 eggs, it's 38 cents an egg. But if you buy them in a dozen eggs, it's 33 cents. In other words, you're paying 5 cents an egg extra for buying 18. You should buy 12 or 30, depending on the example. But that's the point. If you don't know what an egg is really worth, how do you know if you should buy 6, 12, 18, or 100 eggs at once? So just by paying attention to the eggs you're buying, if you buy it by the dozen, by the 18, or by the 30, and if you're buying a dozen eggs a week, which would be relatively low for a lot of families, a lot of people probably buy more than that. If you change the package you're buying, your price can go from $200 a year up to about $237 a year. So, it winds up being a lot of money that you can save just based on the size of the package you buy, because a lot of people assume you buy in bulk, it's cheaper, which a lot of the time it is, but a lot of the time it's not. To go back to the craft dinner example, again, we're not advocating you buy craft dinner. I had to laugh. It costs more to buy a craft dinner in a box of 12 than it costs to buy it in an individual package off the shelf. And I thought, how can that be? But again, if you're not paying attention, it kills you. So it doesn't matter what you're buying, a car, a computer, a cell phone, a tube of toothpaste, mouthwash, whatever. Look at the stuff you buy on a regular basis, meat, vegetables, flour, eggs, that kind of stuff, and learn what the cost is. So here's another funny one. Here in Ontario and in some other places, you can buy milk in those 4-liter bags. You get 4 liters at a shot. Right now, that's about $5.89 in a lot of places in Ontario. But if you buy a 1-liter thing, it's $3.25. And if you buy a half-liter thing, I forget what it is, whatever. Bottom line is, if you buy in the 4-liter bag, it is substantially cheaper. If you buy a liter at a time, it's about 3 times the cost to buy 1 liter than it is to buy 4 liters at once. So here's the thing. If you don't use a lot of milk, buy the 4-liter container, throw 2 of the bags in the freezer, and they're just fine for weeks and months on end. When you need the next thing of milk, pull it out, stick it in the container, let it thaw, and you're good to go. And you wind up saving yourself a couple of bucks a liter. Now, depending how much milk you use, that could be a few dollars a year. If you're a family of 4, you use a lot of milk, it can be hundreds of dollars a year. Same thing applies. By changing the way you buy the product and by changing the way you use it, and by knowing what a good price is for a liter of milk, it works out to hundreds of dollars a year for a family of 4. And, same thing we said before, a couple of $100 on your mortgage saves you a few $1,000 on the other end. A couple of $100 on your credit card saves you a bunch of money there. So that's just kind of one of the real key principles of the book, is to say, know what you're buying and know what is a fair price. And if you don't know that, then, you're going to wind up paying anywhere from 200 to 300% more for food than you should.
So on that note, how would one know what a fair price is? Like, how do you, other than just going around and getting a data sample of all the various prices and going with an average, low and high and in the middle, how would one find out what is a fair price for X or Y?
So a certain part of it is just watching the stuff you buy, watch it every week and see what the prices are. When they're on sale, price goes up, price goes down, et cetera, et cetera. If you happen to be one of these people and you've got a smartphone you use a lot, you can get one of those price matching apps if you happen to live in an urban or suburban area, where you can look at what Walmart is selling something for, and then you can look at what it's being sold for at the store down the street, and it'll tell you right there on the phone that this thing is costing $1 more here than it is there, sort of a thing. That kind of thing can be done. A lot of it's just knowledge. So I actually do something. When I buy a product these days, one of the things I do, especially if I'm buying in bulk, like I buy coffee, something like this, I actually write on it when I bought it, 11/23, 11th month of 2023, and I paid $10.11 for that because it was on a really good sale that day. So now that sits in my cupboard with all the rest of my coffee things. And I know when I go, oh, I should buy coffee again because I'm getting low, I'll look at it and say, okay, I paid $10 for the last one. What am I going to pay for the next one? And if I go out and it's $12 or $14, I go, oh, you know what? I think maybe I'll check a sale. I'll look around. I'll see what it is. So it's a matter of paying attention, knowing what you buy, and knowing what you pay for. Also, a few people still have flyers. Some stores still physically deliver them to mailboxes. A lot of them put them online. So when you go to buy an expensive product like meat, or you're going to buy like a 20-pound bag of potatoes or something, look around, see what it's worth, stick it in your brain and learn it, and then pay attention on a day-to-day basis. Now, that actually takes a bit of work. It takes a bit of knowledge, but, there you go. When you look at the amount of money it costs you, or when you look at the amount of money you can save, it's worth doing. I just, by the way, saw somebody pop up, no seed oils. And yeah, here's another thing. Learn to start looking at food. And this, if you've got an internet connection, or if you've got a book, you should be able to do this. What are you actually buying, and is it healthy? So just for fun, in the book, Rick and I, like my co-author there, we were in Edmonton a while ago, and we were going through the store looking at all the bread. And a couple of people looked at us really weird because we're taking pictures of packages of bread, and they think, what are them two weird guys doing? But here's the thing. When I make bread with a bread maker, it contains water, whole wheat flour, salt, sugar, olive oil, and yeast. 6 ingredients. When you go to buy a bag of white bread in the store, which I strongly recommend against, but nonetheless, it contains flour, water, sugar, yeast, vegetable oil, salt, and 10 other chemical ingredients. And you sit there and you go, wow, how come I can make bread with 6 ingredients and they're using literally a list of 16 ingredients?
So a lot of people don't know that bread is it's one of the hyper processed foods that you discuss in the book.
Yeah, white bread
by definition.
Yeah, white bread bought in a store is terrible for sugar levels. It's terrible for health. There's very little in it that's good, and it's expensive. It's getting expensive. I just saw a thing today, Dempster's bread in the store, $4 a loaf, and I'm like, $4 for a loaf of bread? Wow. Now, I know there's other stuff, $2.50, $3, but it's like, wow, if you make it in a bread machine by yourself, it's well under $1 if you buy yeast in bulk. So when you're buying white bread in a store in one of those plastic bags, and you're getting it from Dempster's or whoever, doesn't matter, any of the commercial things, not are you getting the standard ingredients, you're getting defatted soy flour, lactic acid, fermented rye flour, sorbic acid, various enzymes, dicetyl tartaric acid esters, whatever that is, sodium sterol, added wheat gluten, calcium propionate, and vegetable monoglycerides. Now, one of those chemicals actually kills mold. The reason bread doesn't go moldy anymore for a week or so is they have chemicals in there that are so good they kill mold. A lot of those chemicals are emulsifiers, which means it makes the bread puffy. So instead of using 8 ounces of flour to make a loaf of bread, they can use 7 ounces of flour to make that same loaf of bread, and you wind up buying air. So buying a hyper-processed food like white sliced bread in a store, you're paying a bunch of extra money. White flour has all the nutrition taken out of it, and it's just bad for your health at high expense. And white bread is the almost perfect example of everything that's wrong with our food system. Oh, it's convenient. It's pre-sliced. Isn't this wonderful? You grab it and you go. Well, it's got no nutrition. It plays havoc with your sugar system in your body, and it dumps a whole bunch of weird chemicals into you. And if you want to know why people are getting diabetes, if you want to know why people are getting cancer when they're in their 20s and their 30s, the answer is a lot of it is hyper-processed food and lifestyle. So we go into that quite a bit in the book. On a lot of people say, oh, you should go vegan and it's healthier. Well, It can be, but here's the thing. A lot of so-called vegan food is actually hyper-processed food in a box, and it's no healthier than the rest of the crap.
Right, right. Unless you're eating
So,
raw, if you're like a raw vegan, you're eating vegetables or whatever, those
hmm.
Beyond Meat and all this other stuff. I've looked at those ingredients, and you can't name 90% of the items that are in there. There's just
Yeah,
weird
here's the thing.
ones.
If you
List.
can't, yeah, if you
It's like
can't pronounce
alchemy.
it, yeah, if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't eat it. Simple as
Yeah,
that.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
um, here's the thing with the vegan stuff. They say, well, vegan food is healthier. And it's like, well, if you got somebody over here that eats frozen pizza, goes to McDonald's and eats Pop-Tarts, and then you get somebody else over here that's a fairly hardcore vegan, well, chances are the vegans eating better because they're just eating less hyper processed crap, less sugar, less chemicals, like a raspberry Pop-Tart. There's no raspberries in it. There's nothing in there that's
Right,
redeemable whatsoever. So
right.
eat a handful of raspberries, eat a Pop-Tart. Okay, the raspberry guy is going to do better. But bottom line is you can still eat perfectly healthy if you eat hamburger, if you eat pork chops, if you eat chicken breast, if you eat whatever. The trick is to just stay away from the garbage. Now, when I used to be aircrew, we used to fly a lot, and you know this from being deployed in the field. What do you wind up with? Mars bars, can of Coke, bag of chips. You know, it's just a lifestyle thing, and you get it eating a lot of crap food. And I did the same thing when I was in the military. A lot of folks do it when they travel on the road and stuff. You fall into a really bad habit of Mars bars and cans of Coke and crap like that.
Hmm.
And
Which
that
is
stuff,
one thing. If you're I mean, if you're burning 5,000 calories a day, that's another story. But if you're not and you're eating that stuff, you're in a bit
yeah,
of
and
trouble.
it's spiking your sugar system in your body. It's just disastrous stuff. So yeah, that's kind of a thing. So when they say you should quit eating meat and start eating vegan because it's healthier, well, what it actually is if you're eating McDonald's all the time and pepperoni pizza, yeah, that's probably not really good. You shouldn't eat that. And the vegan guy is right in the sense that the vegan diet is probably healthier. Having said that, you can eat a perfectly healthy diet that's made out of carrots, blueberries, strawberries, potatoes,
Sure.
beef, whatever. The trick is to avoid hyper processed foods. Now, what the heck is hyper processed food? It's just food that's been processed a bunch of times to a point where it's no longer really recognizable as actual food. So a Pop-Tart is a perfect example of hyper processed food. When you look at a Pop-Tart, can you actually tell what it is? The answer is you can't. Well, it's probably flour, but it says it's a strawberry Pop-Tart. Is there a strawberry in it? No, not even close. It's red food dye and flavoring. So if you can look at something and it's called food and you can identify it, that's a carrot, that's a piece of chicken, that's a piece of cabbage, well, then you probably should eat it. If you look at it and you can't really tell what it's made out of, then that's a pretty good indicator that it's hyper processed and you really might want to think about not eating it, at least not on a regular basis. So, one of the worst of the worst of hyper processed food, chicken nuggets, uh, sausages, and some deli meat, processed cheese foods. Now, eating cheese, fine. Eating cheese whiz, read the label. It actually says it's a processed cheese substance. What does that even mean?
It's like that reminds me of anybody who's American watching, especially if you're from like Northeast. They call it government cheese.
Yeah,
It's the cheese that you used to get from the food stamps that would be issued, and it's basically like Velveeta slash cheese whiz in a block.
yeah. And that
Government
stuff
cheese.
used
Don't eat the government cheese, man.
yeah. Years ago, that used to be real cheese. Now it's not. It's this processed cheese substance. It's like, oh
Right.
my God. Frozen dinners, those things are terrible. Hot dogs, packaged soups, potato chips, especially highly flavored ones like plain chips with low salt, not too bad. Barbecue chips, all dressed chips, crushing amounts of salt and crap in them. Commercially produced bread. Make your own sour bread. Make your own. Get a bread machine. Make it yourself. Make what do they call it? Yeast free bread. Like I make bread with no yeast in it. It's easy to
Mhm.
make. You can make it in about 40 minutes. It's great. Uh, Energy drinks. Oh my God. I'm not opposed to the idea of a drink that gives you more energy. That's fine. Here's
Pure
the
poison.
huge amount of caffeine in it, which is actually killing some people in some places. This is starting to be a problem now.
Yep.
And the other thing is there's a bunch of weird chemicals in there that supposedly concentrate your brain, make you smarter and all that. The problem is they actually block minerals and vitamins.
Is
So,
that
but
is that the taurine specifically?
yes, exactly. That kind of stuff. So a lot of the stuff that's in the energy drink that gives you that total high for a short period of time is caffeine and sugar. In other words, you could eat, you could have a cup of coffee with like 4 tablespoons of sugar in it, and away you go. But some of the other stuff is actually supposed to make you concentrate better. And that's great to have one once in a while or something. I don't know. But if you drink those things on a regular basis, they block your body's ability to pick up minerals, to pick up vitamins. So not only is there zero nutritional value in those drinks by themselves, they're actually crushing your body's ability to absorb the good stuff from the other food you're eating. Breakfast cereals like Sugar Pops, at least they're honest. Sugar Pops, it's sugar. That's what it is. Here's an idea. Buy a bag of oatmeal, cook it up or stick it in the microwave for a couple of minutes, throw in a couple of blueberries, throw in some cinnamon, whatever you want to make it taste like something. Less than half the cost, a whole lot healthier. Frozen desserts tend to be really bad. Bakery products, when you buy muffins and cakes from bakeries, it's the same as the bread. It's not so much the muffin or the cake, it's all the chemical crap they stick in it on top of that. That's the issue. And the other thing that I learned years ago, I used to try buying those granola bars rather than buying chocolate bars, thinking, oh, this is healthier. Yeah, a lot of them are. Some of the granola bars or whatever, the chewy bars, are actually better than eating a Mars bar, and they're not bad. But a lot of them are like 20 to 30% sugar. So again, depending on what you buy, read the friggin' label. Look at what you're buying to understand. And if you're buying something and it says, oh, for every 33 grams of product in this chewy bar, 12 grams of that is sugar. In other words, a third of it's sugar. In other words, it's killing you. And that's the kind of stuff you really want to look at in terms of obesity, diabetes, inflammatory diseases such as cancer, such as type 2 diabetes. This is what is killing us. Now, here's the other trap. It's a debt trap. Processed food costs more, so you're spending more money so you can eat less healthy food. But because you're less healthy, you're less productive, your job's not going to go as well. But people then say, oh, well, you're overweight. You have to take these obesity pills. Oh, you have high blood pressure because of this. You need to take statins and all this kind of stuff. And some of these pills and drugs are sometimes worse than the actual problem. So you get caught into this trap of eating bad food. It makes you unhealthy. They feed you drugs and chemicals, which fixes one problem, but causes some other problems.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
at the end of the day, you just wind up unhealthy. So here's the idea. Beat the bastards. Quit buying the crap. Go for a walk. Your cost of living will go down. Your health will go up. Your net wealth go up. Now, this is not an environmental book. I'm not an environmentalist or a tree hugger, but just one of the other things we mentioned in the book a lot of the times, if you eat healthy, you buy smarter and you buy less processed crap and you buy better gear. We can talk about buying intelligent gear, like buy good frying pans, buy good products. Mm-hmm. If you lead a healthier lifestyle and a cheaper lifestyle, it's also better for the environment. So again, I'm not an environmentalist. It's not something I think about a lot. But one of the things that becomes clear as you start looking at this, the more attuned you are to what you buy, what you eat, how you live, whether you have a clothes dryer or not, how you use it, all that stuff, it's cheaper, it's healthier, and guess what? Bonus, it's better for the environment. Now, I'm not saying you should do this stuff because I'm an environmentalist. I'm saying you should do this stuff because it's good for your health and it's good for your wealth.
Well, just before you keep going, I think it's important to distinguish those two things. Like the term environmentalist, I mean, it goes back to Oregon, Ted Kaczynski, anarchy type, what do they call it? A world free or something like that. But we're talking environmentalists and loving nature without the communist ideology attached to it. Everyone actually cares about nature if you're a decent human being. If I didn't have garbage trucks coming by to pick up my stuff once a week, I still want to have less waste on my property. I want to burn less garbage, right? So this is all common sense stuff. And there's no politics or ideology associated with it, right? Like it's actual environmentalism, not this bullshit that's going on right now.
Yeah, it's like all this climate change and everything else. Most of it's ideology. It's got very little to do with the actual environment. So packaging, if you buy whole food versus buying hyper-processed food, a lot of hyper-processed food has 2 or 3 layers of packaging in it. If you buy a banana, it comes wrapped in its own package, that kind of thing. And such waste as you do have, the banana peel can wind up in your compost heap or whatever. So yeah, another little thing, just while we're on the subject of environmentalism and food, here's a weird thought. If you're going to make your own soup, which you should, because it's cheaper and healthier, less salt and crap in it, a lot of people will use stuff like potatoes, which they peel, carrots, which they peel. A lot of people peel sugar beets if they're going to make pickled beets and that kind of stuff. And my grandmother used to wash them and not peel them. And I said, well, why are you doing that? And she goes, well, it's the best part. And I kind of thought, yeah, okay, whatever, grandma, whatever. Anyway, sure enough, I learned years later that most of the really good stuff that's in a carrot or a potato or similar vegetables is actually in the peel. So if you're going to make beet soup or potato soup or tomato soup or something like that, wash the thing off, which you should always do. Whatever you're eating, you should give it a good wash, just for whatever. Chop up the potato, throw it in the pot. Chop up the carrot, throw it in the pot, and boil it. Keep the peel in there. It's less waste, so you're not throwing stuff in the garbage. And if you don't have a compost heap or something, it winds up in the garbage. Then it's got to go to the city, and the city takes care of it. Blah blah blah. So it's less waste. It's better for the environment, and most of the minerals and the vitamins and the antioxidants and the anti-inflammatories, all that stuff that keeps you healthy, most of that stuff tends to be in the peel, and that's where the good stuff is. So keep that. Now, another quick thing, another thought in my head here. If you boil a bunch of potatoes, or if you have a slow cooker and you boil up some beef or, in a slow cooker, save the water. Now, my grandmother on one side of the family was horrendous. She would boil fish and save the water. Oh my God. But she would boil potatoes, save the waters, boil beef, save the water.
I like her already.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If you have a slow cooker and you cook up, so that's what I do with the slow cooker. I buy the cheaper cuts of beef and then cook them in the slow cooker, and they're just as good. But that water you're left with at the end of it, pour that off, stick it in a yogurt container or a container of cashews, these kinds of things. Throw it in the freezer, and then next time you go to make soup, next time you go to make gravy, next time you do something, use that water instead of using tap water. Why? Because a whole bunch of the vitamins and the minerals are in the water. So same thing if you make soup. A lot of people start with stock. They'll go to the store and they'll buy chicken stock or beef stock, whatever. Why are you paying for that when what you should be doing is when you boil chicken or if you boil beef or if you boil potatoes, save that water. And then next time you go to make soup, use that water. Cheaper, better for you, better for the environment, one less trip to the grocery store. And once again, there you go. I see somebody just put up a thing that says, I save my peels to make stock. Yep. Save the peels, stick them in a jar, keep them in the fridge. And when you go to make stock, throw a whole bunch of peels in the pot, boil the daylights out of them. There's your soup stock. It's cheaper. It's better for you. It is better for the environment and less taxes to the government. You got to love that.
Yep, absolutely. So, all these little tricks, man. For example, I get my beef. I'm not raising beef yet, but I will be eventually, hopefully, fingers crossed. But I get some down the road from a local cattle rancher, and he gives me all of his bones, so I make all my stock. It takes me. I even boil it down for a good. I'll put the recipe up on the channel anyways, but I spend all day making stock, and then I have stock for gravies and soups and everything for the next 6 months.
Yeah. Cheaper, better for you. And
oh yeah, it's so good.
And a lot of the really queer minerals and vitamins and stuff that our bodies tend to be short on, a lot of that stuff is found in peels, stalks, that kind of stuff. So again, cheaper, better for you. Way you go. Now, just another stray thought going by here, talking about money, whatever. People run short on money. Happens. That's why you have a credit card. That's why you've got an overdraft in your bank, whatever. That's why you get cash allowances on credit cards and that sort of stuff. So real life happens. You need money. You wind up borrowing it for the short term. Here's the thing. I look at those payday loan things, and I can tell our society is in massive trouble because here in Ottawa, in Toronto, and when I was just out in Edmonton, those payday loan things are popping up in every street corner.
They used to only be in the poorest of neighborhoods. Now they're everywhere.
Now they're moving out. Because more and more people are going to those things. Here's the thing. I got the calculator out and did a little math. Let's say you're short $300 because you just took your car in and the guy says, yeah, that weird noise, that was your power steering pump. That's $300. Okay, boom, $300. So if you put a $300 loan on your line of credit for 14 days, let's say you've got a line of credit, a HELOC or something like that, that $300 is going to cost you $5.92 for 2 weeks. If you do that on a bank overdraft, the bank's going to ding you for that. And right now it'd be about $7.42. If you have a cash allowance thing on your credit card and you take cash off your credit card and hand it to the guy that fixed your car, that's going to cost you $7.65. If you go to Payday Loans and borrow $300 for 2 weeks, $51. 51 friggin' dollars. So I see people going to Payday Loan, and it's like, if you want to know if your life is in serious trouble and you're going broke, the answer to that question is, if you're going to Payday Loans, you're in trouble. You are in massive financial trouble if you borrow money from those guys on a rotating.
Sign number one.
Yeah, sign number one that something's not quite right. You're going to Payday Loan. If you're doing that, you can't get away from it. There's a sign you are in serious trouble. All 4 engines are on fire, and we're going in, boys.
Another thing you brought up in the book too, before you carry on, is also the credit cards, right? Like if you do use them, I use them. I collect the points, but I pay mine off every month, right? And that's something that I do in control. But if you're only paying the bare minimum of your interest on your credit card, you're also you're doing it wrong. Like,
yeah.
stop.
So here's another quick thing. It's almost impossible now to live without a credit card, which drives me nuts. But there it is. So you want to buy something online, you need a credit card. You want to buy a plane ticket because you're going somewhere, you need a credit card. You want to go on Via Rail, you got to have a friggin' credit card, unless you want to go down like 5 days ahead of time and pay cash, So there's credit cards. They're fine. They're a means of transaction. That's great. If you are a super, super good customer of a bank, you've got a bazillion dollars in the bank and a good credit rating, your interest rate on your credit card is going to be around 10, 12, 14%, something like that. If you're kind of Joe average consumer with a good credit rating, you're kind of in the 18% range. If you're perhaps not such a good consumer, your credit card is going to be 28%. And if you get a store credit card, not Shoppers, but I mean like Canadian Tire, Susie Shear, Home Depot, those kinds of places, those things are all 28%. And now when they're changing the law in the United States, some of them are 32%. The mob would be embarrassed to charge those kinds of interest rates, but they're doing it and getting away with it. So here's the thing. If you've got a Canadian Tire card, a Visa card, a MasterCard, a Susie Shear card, and a Home Depot card, and you're paying the minimum on each one, you're a debt slave. You are not working for yourself. You're not working for the family. You're working for some banks. That's all you're doing. So debt is a trap. So we now live in a society, and this is part of my Bank of Canada knowledge. Our economy has been financialized. Now, what do I mean by that? So look at just say Home Depot or Canadian Tire. You say you want to buy a snowblower. So you walk in there and say, yeah, you decide I want that snowblower. How much is it? $1,200. Okay. So the kid behind the counter goes, oh, sir, you should get our new Canadian Credit Tire credit card. We'll give you $200 off on your first purchase, or 10% off in your first purchase. You can save $200 in that snowblower. You go, wow, $200, good deal. So you get the Canadian Tire credit card because you can fill it out right there. Now, what Canadian Tire is hoping you're going to do, same as Susie Shear, same as Home Depot, same as the rest of them, they're not actually selling you hardware as a way of making money. What they're doing is they're getting you a credit card as a way of making you money, or making themselves money. They want you to get the credit card, and then at 28%, they want you to buy more stuff. And they know that if people have a credit card, they're going to buy stuff that they probably wouldn't buy otherwise. So the next thing you know, you owe money to Visa, you owe money to MasterCard, you owe money to Home Depot, you owe money to Canadian Tire, you owe money to Reitman's, you owe money to Susie Shear, whatever. I've seen people with like 8 credit cards. And if you're paying the minimum on each one, I can promise you, you're going broke. You are in a lot of trouble. You are working at that point strictly for the bank. So here's the thing. If you go broke, let's say like the example of the power steering pump on your truck craps out, well, guess what? You may have to go into debt to get that fixed for a month or so. But if you go on a vacation and you stick that vacation on your credit card, that is insanity unless you pay that credit card off the next month. So put money in a credit card, pay at the end of the month. Great. Not a problem. Maybe not a preferred solution, but nothing really wrong with it. If you don't pay it off the next month, you're working for the bank, or you're working for the credit card company, or you're working for Home Depot, or whatever. So if you're not paying your credit card down every month, and if you've got multiple credit cards, that's an indicator and warning that your life is in a downward spin and you need to start working on that. So the general kind of rule is you have to think, and this is another part of the book, what do I need? What do I want? And what's nice to have? And people go, I need a new flat screen. And the answer is, no, you don't. You already have a 52-inch flat screen. Why do you need a 72-inch flat screen? Well, I need it. No, you want it, or it's nice to have. You need to eat. You need gas in your car. That's important. You don't need another friggin' flat screen. So train yourself to say, when I want to buy something and I'm going to stick it on my credit card, I'm going to go into debt. Do I actually need this, or do I just want it? So if you do want that, I don't know what the heck are they now, like a 102-inch flat screen or whatever it is. If you actually decide if you want one of those things for your man cave, good. Get a jar, stick it on the counter, put $5 in it, and then say, right, I'm not going to McDonald's tomorrow. When I go out for beer on Friday night with the boys, I'm not having 5 beer, I'm having 3. And I'm putting the other $16 in the can. When you get enough money to buy the flat screen, then go buy it. That way your $1,000 flat screen cost you $1,000 instead of putting it on your Visa card at 28%, where it winds up costing you $1,280 if you pay it off in a year, or it costs you $1,500 if you pay it off in 2 years. So it's the same kind of thing. If you're putting money on a credit card, or if you're putting money on a mortgage or a HELOC or a line of credit or whatever, remember that you are paying twice, once for the product and once for the privilege of getting it early. So if you don't actually need it, save up for it, then buy it, and it makes a massive difference in your life. I've seen people, I know families that go on vacations and they cost like, oh, we want to take the kids to Disney World, and they spend like $12,000 on these stupid trips to Disney World. They stick it on the credit card and then they pay it down with a home equity line of credit. Well, by the time you pay that thing off 2 or 3 years later, A, you're probably divorced because you and your wife hate each other anyway because you're fighting over money all the time. Plus the cost of divorce. Plus, you wind up paying for the vacation, twice what you should have if you wind up taking 3 to 4 years to pay that down. So again, if you really want to go to Disney World with the kids or whatever, start saving up now, pay cash, and it'll probably cost you half or less than it would if you wind up sticking on a credit card. Now, another quick thought here. Home equity line of credit, HELOC. These things can either be the best invention since pre-sliced bread, or they can be suicide depending on what you do. So a home equity line of credit says you paid $400,000 for your house. You pay the mortgage for a couple of years and the house becomes worth $500,000 in the meantime. So you now have $120,000 in equity in your house. Well, good for you. But here's the thing. The bank then comes to you and says, oh, you need a home equity line of credit. We'll give you a $30,000 home equity line of credit tied to the value of your home. And guess what? Instead of paying 18% on your credit card, you're going to pay 10% on your home equity line of credit. And you go, wow, geez, that's good. I'll get the home equity line of credit and I'll pay off my credit cards. So instead of paying 18 and 20% here, I'm paying 10% there. Well, if you do that, that's actually a smart move. If you can take money that's paying 18 or 28% on it and re-borrow it at 10%, that's a smart move.
Absolutely. That's they call that the bucket system, right? Like pay off your 28% first, get the high interest rate stuff out of the way, and then eventually work your way to getting rid of the mortgage.
Work your way down. Yeah. So here's the trick, however, and banks aren't stupid. They know that in a lot of cases, somebody's going to run up $15,000 or $20,000 in credit card debt. They get a home equity line of credit. They pay off the $20,000 on the credit cards. So that goes from 28% down to, say, 10%. What do? They take the credit card and they go out and buy the flat screen. They go out and buy the new Game Boy. They take whatever. And guess what? Now you owe money on the home equity line of credit plus your credit cards. In other words, you didn't lose. You shot yourself in the foot. Now, here is the trick with home equity line of credits. Read the fine print. If the bank decides, they can come to you and say, hey, look, you owe $20,000 on your home equity line of credit. And you go, yes, I do. And they go, good, give it to us. And you go, I ain't got it. And they go, well, too bad, we're taking your house. and they can do that. Now, will they do it? Chances are not most of the time. But if they think you're in financial trouble and they think you're not going to pay your home equity line of credit, they can take your house. That's the trick behind those things. Now, here's the other thing. Right now in Canada, real estate's been going up. And my guess is because of the mass migration in Canada, the price of real estate will continue to go up. But at some point, a year down the road, 3 years, 5 years down the road, now we're going to get another real estate crash. So let's say you paid 400 grand for your house. It's then worth 600. So you get a $30,000 line of credit to pay off your credit card debts, to pay off your car loan. And there you go. Now you owe $30,000 on your home equity line of credit. And the price of the house drops from 600 down to 450 because of the real estate crash. The bank can then come to you and say, you don't have that much equity in your house anymore, so you're paying us the money. And you go, I ain't got it. And they go, that's fine. They take your house, they sell it, they pay themselves off to get their home equity line of credit back. They pay off whatever's left owing on the mortgage, and they give you whatever's left, if there's anything left. So home equity line of credit, if you're in financial trouble, can be a good way to get out from underneath debt, especially if it's credit card debt, student loan debt, car loan debt, that kind of stuff. So in that case, a home equity line of credit, great idea. But remember, it's got a hook in it. And the hook is, at the end of the day, the bank can take your house, because what you're actually borrowing against is the equity that's in your house, the actual value of the part of the house that you actually own. So again, that's one of those little things. It's a great idea. Have a home equity line of credit, pay off some debt. You can save a lot of money that way. But pay attention, because if you're stupid and you run up your credit cards again, and then we get a real estate crash, they can literally take your house. And
it defeats the purpose of, if you're going to use your HELOC to pay off your debt on a credit card or whatever high interest loan that you have, and then you go back and continue to use those financial mechanisms, you're still using the same habit, right? So the whole point in this book, or one of the points in this book, is also changing your habits, right?
Yep.
So that's step number one, and that's discipline. And going back to basics, cash, for example, a lot of people in the chats are talking about cash. Cash is king. It still is king, and it's financial. It's tangible. It's concrete. When you purchase something and your transactions are used with cash, you're less likely to spend more than what you need, and wants don't exist.
Yeah. So here's another little thing we haven't talked a lot about. There's a section in the book at the end which actually explains a bunch of the kind of like the big words you use. So people are familiar with the concept of a wage, i.e. you work for so long, you get so much money. You get paid so much per hour, so much per week, so much per year. Great. Well, there's also the term real wages. And this is something people should think about. So right now, because we're in a period of inflation, which is running maybe about 4 or 5% right now. Last year, it was running around 8 or 9%. A lot of people are going to get a raise from whatever company or organization they work for because of inflation. So somebody, let's say right now, they get a 10% wage, a 10% raise, and they go, wow, hey, my salary just went from $60,000 a year to $66,000 a year. Wow, I'm making $6,000 a month more than I was. Hey, I am going to buy that flat screen. Hey, we are going to go to Disney World. Yeah, you might want to think that one through. Your wage has gone up, which is a good thing. However, over the last couple of years, your real wage, which is how much money you have left over after inflation, has actually probably gone down, because in 2021, 2022, we were running at 7, 8, 9%. Now we're running at 4%. So if you got, let's say, a 10% raise last year, but that's the first time in 3 or 4 years you got a raise, you actually lost money. In other words, your actual wage went up, but what you can do with that wage after inflation has actually gone down. So when a loaf of bread was $2, you had $100, you could buy 50 loaves of bread. Well, if you go to the store today and it's $3 a bread, your $100 now gets you 33 loaves of bread instead of 50.
Yeah. Your purchasing power is completely gone, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, inflation is stealing your money. So people think, wow, I got a 10% raise. The answer is your lifestyle has actually gone down in the last couple of years, notwithstanding the perception you're making more money. So this is another thing we're trying to tell people and say, look, inflation is not your friend. It's a silent thief. A lot of time you don't even see it happening. But if you don't pay attention to these kinds of things, you think your lifestyle is getting better, so you're tempted to spend more money. But in fact, your actual ability to live, to maintain that lifestyle is going down and not up, unless you actually make some other changes in your life as well. So one of the things I do, like every Saturday, I live on one part of Ottawa. My friend Phil lives somewhere else. We meet in the middle every Saturday. We go for breakfast in the morning. And this is, again, part of how this book got written. So we just kind of noticed, like every time we buy breakfast, like, wow, you know, boy, that price went up. So I went back and looked in 2020, the restaurant we go to, the breakfast special was $12. Now that same breakfast special is $17. It's gone up $5 a plate in the last, well, 3.5, 4 years or whatever. So not only is that $5 more, it's actually $5.75 more, because we've got a 15% GST here in Ontario, HST, whatever the hell it is. So basically, if you have two people going out for breakfast, let's say you got a couple living in a house, our mythical couple that lives in the house there, inflation is robbing them slowly over a period of time, and they don't even notice it most of the time. So if your breakfast used to cost $12 each, and that was $24 each, well, now it's $17 each, and that's $34 each. And, you know, you look at it and say, that's about a $10 a week increase. 50 weeks a year, that's $500. So by not changing one of your habits, by just eating the same stuff at the same restaurant, you know, you go out every Saturday morning for breakfast with the friends, your cost of living has gone up for that mythical couple $500 a year, and chances are you didn't even notice it, because it was $12, then it was $12.50, then it was $13.25, and then it was $14, and you don't even notice it over a period of time. But this gets down to the same question we raised earlier. What is the value? What is the cost? Do you know what you're paying for, and what are you willing to pay for it? So one of the things we say, look, start ordering down menu. Don't get the breakfast special, get the breakfast sandwich. Or other idea, it's a social thing. Eat at home. Make your own breakfast. And by the way, if you're having breakfast with friends, invite them over. Maybe this is the plan. Invite them to your house this weekend. The cost of feeding 4 people in your house for breakfast will be less than what it costs for 2 of you to eat at the restaurant. And then if you get this going back and forth with your friends, and you eat at their house this week and your house next week, typically your cost of eating at home is going to be around 50 to 60% of what your cost is eating out. So it's a big, big money saver. If you've got kids, and the kids, of course, oh, we want to go to McDonald's, we want to go to Burger King. Well, that gets expensive real quick, and it ain't healthy. Here's the other idea. A friend of mine has a couple of kids. What they do is every Friday night, they get the family together. They all go in the minivan. They go down to the store. They buy the hamburger. They buy the buns. They buy the onions, whatever. They go home and they make the smash burgers together. So they're making all these smash burgers and then blah, blah, blah. And he says, yeah, okay, it costs a little extra money to go to the store, an extra trip to the store you didn't have to make or whatever. But he says, at the end of the day, it's way cheaper than going to McDonald's. It's a lot healthier than going to McDonald's. And they've turned it into a social event for the family. It's a big deal where they all get in the van, they all make the hamburgers together, they all go to the barbecue together, and it's that kind of thing. So again, it's just a change your habits, do things a little different. It's more social. It's probably better for your kids. It's cheaper and it's healthier. And in the long run, you say, well, okay, you know, I'm saving $10 a week. So what? $10 a week, $500 a year, $500 extra dollars on your mortgage over 25 years is a few $1,000s at the other end. All of that for just changing the way you eat out. So that's another kind of
that is go ahead. You were saying that.
Oh, I lost your audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So anyways, dude, wisdom right there. Like I stated before, this may be common sense for certain folks, but for a lot of folks, it's not. But it is the world that we live in. It's pretty safe to say that everything is an illusion. A lot of things are fake, you know, and all of these things are traps, and it's death by convenience. And this is how you get put into all forms of slavery. And Patti Hacks has some solutions for people to be able to change their habits, put some money aside, pay down the death pledge, and live a healthier life. And your family will thank you for that. Tom, any last words? Where can people find your book? where can people find you on social media? Floor is yours, good sir.
Okay, the book itself is available at the Veterans for Freedom website. It's in their kit shop there. It's available on amazon.ca.com. Whatever. There's actually a Patti Hacks Twitter account where I sort of put up some of this stuff, and I put up stuff just saying, look, here's a label, here's how much sugar you're getting, here's a label, how much this costs. So it's just, quick tips every day or two. I put a bunch of stuff on there. And some of it's just like simple educational stuff. One other thought: you go into the store and you see this thing, a package of chicken, $12, big special, package of chicken, flat rate, $12. And people go, oh, $12, I'm buying that. And you look at it and go, well, is that actually a good price? Look at the weight. Some of those packages I just noticed, some of them are like 0.65 of a kilo.
They have different weights.
Yeah, some of them are 0.75 of a kilo.
Yeah,
0.75 one at $12 is not a bad deal.
Yeah.
So look at the label. What are you buying? How much you're getting? What is the price per unit? Then you're going to know if it's a good deal or not. So I put that kind of stuff on the Twitter account all the time, just to say, here's what I just saw in the store. This is a good deal. This is you're being robbed.
Right.
So yeah, there's a Twitter account there. The book is on Amazon, or the book is at the V4F website.
Yeah, and it's scrolling on the bottom if anyone hasn't noticed. So go to veteransforfreedom.ca or com. I even forget what it is. Is it? It's coming there. It's .ca. Yeah, check it out. If you go to shop, scroll around. It's not really broken up into categories just yet, I don't think. But anyways, there's a couple books on there, and one of them is Tom and Rick's Patti Hacks. So check that out. It's also available on Amazon as well. Tom, am I correct?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
it's also on Amazon.
Amazon.com. Yeah,
check that out. Use your credit card, get in debt, have a driver bring it over, etc. All that good stuff. But if you do buy it from the Veterans for Freedom kit shop, some of the money goes to veterans who are being crushed by the system. It goes to Tom as well, and we want to thank him for putting this together. Any final thoughts, brother?
I just saw a couple of things in the comment about water. One of the biggest scams ever is people that buy water in bottles at stores. We're in Canada and we're paying for water in a store. If you're actually worried about tap water, contaminants, whatever, buy one of those filter systems, keep it in your fridge. Yes. It's in the Patti Hacks book how much it is going to cost you. And I get it. You may not want to drink tap water, especially in some towns. So filter it yourself. It's about 1/10 of the cost if you filter it yourself, as opposed to buying those bottles in the store. Half that stuff you're buying in the store is tap water anyway, folks. Hate to tell you that. And also you're buying huge amounts of plastic, which means you're drinking a whole lot of plastic. So anyway, I just saw that somebody mentioned the water thing there in the comments. And yeah, it's true. If you're paying for water in those 500 ml bottles at the store, you're paying too much money. Filter it yourself, save a ton of money. And the carbon filters or the charcoal filters you're buying from the companies are just as good as the filtered water at the store. So anyway, one last thought. There we go. Cheers.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you, Tom. And I look forward to having you back. There's so many things that we actually didn't get to touch on. Yeah, if you're available in the future, we can get after households and one income versus two income and all that other jazz.
Cars. Huge
cars. Yes, absolutely. Okay, right on, Tom. I want to thank you again for coming on, good sir, and we'll talk to you soon. Stick around. Actually, I'll just talk to you after the show real quick. I'm just going to give my outro. Thanks, brother. Well, there you go, everyone. I want to thank you for tuning in to the People's Cabana episode number 2, numero 2, with Senor Tom Quiggin. He put together a good book right here, so check it out if you so desire. Patti Hacks. I got my copy, and I read it over some coffee that I made myself, and I grew myself. No, I'm just joking. Anyways, I want to thank you all for coming out, and enjoy yourself. You take care, and God bless. Cheers.
I'm a cowboy.
That is good. Just go ahead.